Window World is the preferred window of the St. Louis Blues. 314-993-1800 or windowworld.com.
Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Better than nothing? The bill to protect kids from so-called transgender treatment passes, but it doesn't protect everybody permanently. I'll explain on Wednesday.
Mornings starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL.
Fox News commentary.
If Trump is arrested, we've officially entered Banana Republic status, America. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
Best-selling author David Horowitz's Final Battle is out, and it reveals the secret war to stop Trump and DeSantis for 2024. Final Battle names the names of the secret players and warns of the end of America. President Trump says you must get this book. Final Battle is at bookstores or see the free offer. Call 1-800-NEWSMAX, 800-NEWSMAX, or go to finalbattle611.com. Get it today.
If the leaks Trump alluded to in his Truth Social post are correct, he could become the first president in U.S. history to ever face criminal charges after leaving office. For what? For a $130,000 hush money payment he allegedly made to porn star Stormy Daniels in 2016 ahead of the election. This alleged crime would generally fit misdemeanor status, and federal prosecutors declined it. But that didn't stop Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg from pursuing it quite obviously as a political witch hunt, which is really something, given Alvin Bragg downgraded over half of felony cases to misdemeanors in 2022. But this is classic look here, not there. The lab leak theory validated. Banks failing. The Biden's family's corrupt business dealings starting to unravel. So the logical thing to do is arrest Trump. How original. You mad? Me too. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show Tommy Lahren is Fearless at Outkick.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
If you're Bill Clinton and you give $850,000 to Paula Jones in a civil settlement, which we all agree was a civil settlement, nothing happens to you. But if you're Donald Trump and you give money in a civil settlement, somehow a crazy theory emerges from a radical leftist DA supported by George Soros to say, well, we're going to have to go after Donald Trump.
And welcome into the Tuesday edition of the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. That is Representative Andy Bigg shaming District Attorney Alvin Bragg of Manhattan. You know, you almost want to start the show now because we're on Donald Trump indictment watch. Something kind of like America, Day One. Will Trump be indicted? You know, something dramatic like it used to be back during the hostage crisis. What do you think, Tim?
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, great to be with you guys again today from Gatlinburg, Tennessee. But I'll tell you, Chris, I don't think Donald Trump could pay for this much free earned media, right? I mean, we're right in the middle. Well, I guess we're right in the beginning of 2024 presidential sweepstakes. And a lot of people who are taking on Donald Trump they probably don't wish that they were under potential indictment, but they probably wish they were in the news as much as Donald Trump manages to get in the news every single week. So, yeah, we're on indictment watch. Yes, we are.
Tim, we got a big show today. At 3:42, we're going to have Dr. Bob Onder, former Missouri State Senator, of course. We're going to talk to him about some of the bills that passed in the Senate and what can we expect towards the end of the session. And then at 4:07, we're going to have Hogan Gidley, our good friend. Of course, he's a former Trump press secretary, and he's with AFPI. He's with their election integrity unit. Of course, at 4:24, we'll have David Stokes from the Show Me Institute. We'll talk about some tax increases that are going to be on the local ballot. And Tim, I'm really excited. At 5:24, we're going to talk again with Miles Yu. He's a senior fellow and director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute. He's also a former China policy advisor to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. It's really relevant to talk to him right now. What's going on with the Chinese president visiting Moscow, the dangers of what type of alliance they're fostering for the future. So we've got a big show. But Tim, because we have Dr. Onder coming up here in about 5 minutes, I want to stay local, kind of stay Missouri, and talk about the Missouri Democratic Party. As you know, Republicans for probably a generation now have had majorities and supermajorities. All of the statewide offices are Republican now. Well, the Democrats have chosen a new leader for their state party. They've dug up an old politician and an old name we all know well in Missouri politics, Russ Carnahan. Want to get your thoughts on old Russ taking the reins of a party that's kind of been drifting last few years.
Wow, Chris, talk about a fresh face for the future, huh? Russ Carnahan. Yeah,
exactly.
Digging up the bones in the graveyard. You know, Chris, got a funny story about Russ Carnahan and how popular he is or not with some members of the Democratic Party. Chris, back in the redistricting year of 2010, when I was in the Missouri House and was working with the, let me think here. That was 2010, right. So I was heavily involved in the redistricting battle of that year. And Chris, let me tell you, the dirty little secret, which may not have been, people have probably forgotten about it because it was so long ago. But Chris, the Black Caucus, which was, almost entirely Democrats in the Missouri House, they were more than happy to get rid of Russ Carnahan. They cut a bunch of deals with the Republican majority that year because we had to lose a congressional district. Right. We had to lose a congressional district. And I will tell you that many of the Black Democrats came to House leadership and said, if we're going to have to get rid of somebody, we'll choose Russ Carnahan. They worked with us to eliminate Russ Carnahan's district. So there you go. The great peacekeeper, Russ Carnahan, not very popular with many factions of the Democratic Party.
I forgot about that. And here's a little tidbit to add to that. The former Missouri Democratic Party chair was our good friend Michael Butler, who is currently the St. Louis Recorder of Deeds, who was an African-American and the first to head the party. If there's still that bad blood from that redistricting fight years ago with African-Americans, and he has replaced an African-American, could be some fireworks up ahead.
And Chris, just at a 35,000 foot level, I mean, what's Russ Carnahan been doing for the past 10 years? I guess he's been lobbying and becoming a DC multimillionaire. Although I don't know. I'm really not sure what Russ Carnahan's been doing. He's been completely out of the limelight as far as I know. So you're telling me that that's the guy who's going to lead the Missouri Democratic Party into the future? It just shows how the struggle is real amongst the MDP here in Missouri.
Yeah, and the Carnahan name, of course, is a dynasty here in Missouri. There was the tragic death of Governor Mel Carnahan, and his wife, of course, took over that Senate seat after his death. And I don't think I'm saying anything that people that are inside of politics wouldn't say also. Out of all of the Carnahan clan, Russ wasn't the one that you looked at as the future or the bright star among them. Would you agree with that?
Oh, totally, Chris. The inside baseball joke was that he was the Fredo of the family, right? He was the not too bright one. And on the other hand, Chris, I don't know, maybe this is an attempt by the Democratic Party to try to pull themselves back from the abyss of left-wing lunacy, because the Carnahans were, old school Democrats, tough on crime. They cared about our military, possibly didn't want to operate on our kids, although, Russ Carnahan has been very involved in the Green New Deal, the Green New Energy aspect. So maybe that's where he fits into today's wokeatocracy with the Democratic Party.
Well, let's see what our next guest thinks about this and other developments. Dr. Bob Onder. Dr. Onder, how are you, sir?
Hey, great to be back, Chris, Tim.
Well, Doc, I know you heard our conversation there about the Missouri Democratic Party has chose Russ Carnahan to be their new leader. As a recovering politician and someone who follows politics very closely, what are your thoughts on their new leader?
Yeah. It was my understanding that after Russ Carnahan was retired from politics, that he cashed in on green energy schemes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have the references or details offhand, but I thought I remembered reading that in the business press back in the day. But, then again, I read about Tyrannosaurus rexes and Brontosauruses back in the day either, and I don't remember much of the details about those.
Senator Onder, I think you're right about that. I think he had something to do with windmills, so maybe that's where he fits in with today's far left lunacy with the Democratic Party. Maybe that'll be his forte. Bob, I know that you have been very closely following the battle to protect children in the Missouri legislature this year. There was a bill that was pending. That's been pending over the last couple of weeks before spring break, after spring break. My understanding is there was an all-night filibuster last night, and that finally that bill did make it across the initial finish line in the Senate.
Right.
I understand it has a lot of different topics in it. Senator, could you break that down for our audience and tell us what has the Senate gave first-round approval to, and do you think it will actually, will it actually protect children, or is it just one of these things where they're just checking boxes and moving the topic down the line?
Yeah. I think there was a certain amount of box checking, Tim, and I think this bill is just a shadow of the SAFE Act that was originally filed by Senator Moon and Senator Carter, Senator Hoskins. Let's say the good, the bad, and the ugly. This bill does purport to ban transgender surgery, puberty blockers, and cross-sex hormones for minors. So that is good, and the language there is pretty strong. And the question, though, then is what happens if you violate that ban on transgender mutilation of kids? And the answer is that you can get your license sanctioned, and you could lose your license. So that's good. And the other answer is that you can get sued. That also is good. So that's the good. What's the bad? Well, first of all, there are no criminal penalties in the bill. But worse yet, there are some pretty glaring loopholes in the bill. And one of those, and this is unbelievable to me, one of those is that kids who are already on these poisonous puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, they are, quote, grandfathered in. In other words, the gender groomers and the quack doctors down at the WashU Transgender Center can continue to give those kids those poisons. So that's not good. If someone's abusing a kid by poisoning him or her, you don't grandfather in the poisoning. But then just as bad, the bill sunsets in 4 years. So,
Whoa.
So in 4 years, so what's going to happen? One of the things I look at is I ask myself as I look at these bills, will this shut down the shop of horrors that Jamie Reed describes at the WashU Transgender Center, Washington University, St. Louis Children's in St. Louis? And the answer is definitely no. They will continue. We know from Jamie's testimony that they have over 1,000 kids that they've put on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in the last few years, and they will be able to continue. And 1,000 is a lot of very lucrative patients. So the WashU Transgender Center, if this law is followed, and if the law is followed is a big if, they will continue to have a very thriving, very profitable business exploiting the 1,000 kids they already have on these drugs. But then in 4 years, they'll be just back to business as usual and continue to and resume taking in new patients and resume referring to for surgery.
We're speaking with Dr. Bob Onder, former Missouri State Senator. Dr. Onder, at 425, we're going to have David Stokes from the Show Me Institute, and we're going to be talking about this proposed online sales tax in St. Charles County. You are a St. Charles County resident and wanted to get your thoughts on that proposed tax.
Yeah. There have been numerous online sales tax kind of proposals in the metro area, including in St. Charles County, and they tend to be rejected. The original lawsuit back in the day that went to the U.S. Supreme Court originally ruled that really out-of-state purchases over the internet should not be taxable because you don't have the contact with the taxing jurisdiction. The idea that you can, tax a business doing business in another state, that was contrary to traditional principles of the law of taxation. So, and I get it, competing with brick and mortar retailers and so on. But, it's honestly really the convenience of online retailing that is what's killing the brick and mortar retailers more so than the tax differential. And of course, Amazon does have facilities in Missouri, as does Walmart, as do a lot of the big box stores. So they already charge online sales tax. But, look, we're taxed enough. More money has gone to government out of Missourians' pocketbooks than ever before. And, I just have a hard time supporting any new tax.
Dr. Onder, the president of the United States, Joe Biden, was led to his Resolute desk today where they handed him a pen and he was told to sign a piece of paper. Not sure if he knew exactly what he was doing or not, Doc, but he signed the bill that had as close to unanimous support as you're going to see in a polarized, divided nation these days. And Bob, that was the bill to declassify all information regarding the origins of COVID. I'm assuming the president felt that, his party is over the barrel on this one. It's time for the charade to be up. So, Doc, are we finally going to start maybe turning our attention to Dr. Fauci and all the misinformation and disinformation that he's been feeding us for all these years, and we can possibly stop pretending that COVID came from some random pangolin or penguin or raccoon dog?
Yeah, or the wet market and the bat soup. I think it's about time. It's become pretty clear, and the U.S. Department of Energy and the FBI agree. It's become pretty clear that the most likely origin of COVID-19 was a laboratory leak, intentional or accidental, from Hunan Institute of Virology in China. Of course, that was dismissed as misinformation and hate speech a very short time ago. As it's been said, the biggest disseminator of disinformation about COVID-19 has been the U.S. government. And the harm that Dr. Fauci and other so-called public health authorities did to our country, to our economy, to our children, to the work ethic of many in this country with the repeated COVID stimulus checks, to the mental health of our children. A recent study showed that 60% of teenage girls suffer from persistent feelings of loneliness and depression, that something like a quarter have contemplated suicide. The damage, the learning loss in our schools, the damage that's been done in the name of fighting this respiratory virus is unconscionable. And Fauci and the public health authorities, they just arrogantly prescribe more and more and more of the same, even as the abysmal results of their policies trickled out. It's unconscionable. I mean, I think, yes, there need to be Senate hearings. congressional hearings. Honestly, I think there needs to be a Nuremberg trial for the war criminals who were Dr. Fauci and his ilk.
Dr. Onder, before the Missouri legislature left for spring break, the Missouri House passed bills restricting foreign ownership of Missouri farmland. They passed a bill on open enrollment, and they passed a bill making it harder to amend the state constitution. Do you see these bills crossing the finish line in late May?
Yeah, those are all good policies. As is, of course, protecting our kids from the transgender groomers. The problem we have in the Missouri Senate so many times is that we have a rhino senators and a really pitiful rhino Republican leadership in the form of Caleb Rowden, especially, who want to be able to check boxes and say they address this or that issue. But when you really look at what they do, what the bills actually do, they do very, very little. And I could give you dozens of examples. So I think we will pass something in all of those areas. Really, we should be restricting ownership of U.S. farmland by the Chinese to 0 should be the number, not this decrease from 1% to 0.5%. The percent should be 0. Definitely open enrollment is a step in the right direction. We also need universal education savings accounts or universal vouchers so that every parent in the state can choose the best education for their child. And I have a lot of concerns about the approach they're taking to making it more difficult to amend our Constitution. I think just tweaking the percentage is not going to accomplish what we want. I'd also like to see a measure that would ensure better representation from around the state. So, a bunch of wokesters in St. Louis and Kansas City aren't amending the Constitution almost by themselves. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in all those areas. I hope something good comes out of the legislature. But again, a lot of that will depend on whether, honestly, Senator Caleb Rowden and Speaker Dean Plocher feel the pressure to stop being rhinos and really pass some good conservative legislation.
Bob, while all of that activity was going on in the Senate today, I was very happy to see my old Missouri House moved some aggressive tax policy items forward. Bob, you'll be happy to know that, because I know you were focused on the Senate as well, the Missouri House has given first-round approval, and Bob, big first-round approval, 109 House, I'm sure it was all Republicans, 109 veto-proof supermajority of House Republicans, Bob, voted for an additional cut to our corporate income tax rate and an immediate reduction in our personal income tax rate from 4.9 down to 4.5. Still a little bit ahead of many of our neighboring states, except for Illinois.
Yeah.
But Bob, I'm speaking to you from the great state of Tennessee this week here on a little spring break with the family. And as we were driving over here, Bob, I was reminded in stark reality as we drove down Interstate 40 what a no income tax, right to work, liberty and freedom state does. There are buildings and cranes and things going up everywhere, not just in Nashville, but all up and down the I-40 corridor. Bob, those types of moves by the Missouri House are really important, and hopefully they'll get some attention in the Senate. What say you?
That's right. There's no question. Last summer when we cut the individual income tax rate, I remember talking to the governor at the time. He was calling members to ask whether he would have our support. I told him, Governor, absolutely, but why don't we do more? So I'm glad to hear the Missouri House is doing more. Again, I think that we need the Republicans, so-called in the Missouri Senate, need to grow a backbone and pass this, because I know Democrats will threaten to filibuster it, and all of a sudden, spines will start to melt into the consistency of jellyfish. And then Caleb Rowden will tell whoever the Senate handler of the bill is that they have to be reasonable and compromise and make the Democrats happy. So, if the Missouri Senate were not run by rhinos, I would be very optimistic, but absolutely I applaud the Missouri House for that step.
Dr. Onder, thank you so much for joining us and giving us a little bit of your time. When we come back, we'll talk with Hogan Gidley and ask him, will his former boss be indicted? You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
Our country is being attacked.
Live and local.
The fact that there are lines. Not received any updates on whether or not there was an uptick in the sale of Doritos.
This is News Talk STL.
Hi, Sean Long for STL Fenceworks. STL Fenceworks is proud and excited to install American-made aluminum and vinyl fence products, as well as American-made decking. For instance, STL Fenceworks has teamed up with Jareth Manufacturing. Jareth invented the aluminum fence industry over 50 years ago. The Jareth product is wholly sourced and manufactured in the U.S., and STL Fenceworks is the third largest Jareth customer in the world. STL Fenceworks is vinyl fencing also, and not just white. We partner with National Vinyl Products to provide you with tan, clay, gray, and variegated wood grain vinyl fence products too, all made in the U.S. Not to be forgotten, STL Fenceworks is maintenance-free decking. STL Fenceworks is the #1 distributor of Wolf Cellular PVC in the Midwest, proudly manufactured in the U.S. and voted #1 maintenance-free decking product in the United States. Let STL Fenceworks make your outdoor space magical. Visit stlfenceworks.com today and learn how we can make your backyard dreams into a reality. At STL Fenceworks, your satisfaction is our passion.
It's time to spring into green with Seidenstricker Nobe Partners. Don't miss this opportunity to save $2,000 and receive 0% financing on select John Deere compact tractor packages. Built to handle any challenges that lie ahead, choose from our All-American, Mississippi Queen, Bulldog, or Homesteader packages. Visit ascentpartners.com for more information. Seidenstricker Nobe, your partner for the land.
Offer valid through 3/31/23. Some restrictions apply. See dealer for details.
Hi, Jen Wallner here. As a former foster child myself, I have always been an advocate for foster children in our community. Angels Arms is an amazing organization that provides a stable, nurturing, and loving family environment for these children. They ensure these children have not only the childhood they deserve, but the resources needed to become successful, thriving adults. I truly believe that this organization is transforming lives, and I could not be more proud to be a small part of that accomplishment. For more information or to get involved, visit angelsarms.org.
The Vic Porcelli Show.
Nate Lucas, our sports guy, doesn't talk about sports. How many times do you think Adam Schiff got beat up on the playground when he was a kid?
What a beta male.
Can you imagine having him as your representative in Congress? First of all, you little beta fish, why don't you do your job? Why don't you worry about your own backyard in California, which is turning into a third world country under your leadership? It is the same play every single time with these jackwagons.
Vic Porcelli, weekday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL. Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Better than nothing? The bill to protect kids from so-called transgender treatment passes, but it doesn't protect everybody permanently. I'll explain on Wednesday.
Mornings starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 101.9, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Jason Walker. Former President Donald Trump remains in Florida. He is waiting out the possibility of criminal charges in Manhattan. Meanwhile, New York City bracing for possible disruptions that could follow an indictment. Asia's stake in Europe's war has been made clear. Leaders of the region's two richest countries now in Russia and Ukraine. Strong shows of support there. Chinese leader Xi Jinping holding talks in Moscow with Vladimir Putin. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida making a surprise visit to Ukraine. Correspondent Charles De Ledesma says one senior regional analyst says that Kishida's support for Kyiv is a very pointed statement.
Ewan Graham, a Singapore-based expert with the International Institute for Strategic Studies, says it shows there's more Asian skin in the game than many people may have thought. As Xi is holding hands with Putin, Kishida is clutching the hand of the president. It's a powerful contrast, he says, and one that demonstrates that Ukraine isn't just a European or Atlantic concern.
Also at townhall.com, Supreme Court has ruled unanimously for a deaf student who sued his public school system for providing an inadequate education.
Bob Agnew has more on that story.
The case involves Miguel Luna Perez, who attended public school in Sturgis, Michigan. Perez's lawyers told the court that for 12 years, the school system neglected the boy and even lied to his parents about his progress, permanently stunning his ability to communicate. Justice Neil Gorsuch wrote an 8-page opinion for the court in which he said the case holds what he called consequences not just for Mr. Perez, but for a great many children with disabilities. Bob Agnew reporting.
And on Wall Street today, strong gains all across the board. More on these stories at townhall.com.
And it's Prager here. Sue and I mean it. Dogs are part of our family. We love Otto and Snoopy so much. There's nothing quite like their loyal companionship. So we provide them with Rough Greens. In fact, I just talked to my wife about it because we want them to be healthy and we want them to be with us as long as possible. That's true. I know Sebastian Gorka feels the same way.
The Pragers and I couldn't agree more. Our pups, Killian and Leia, rely on us to provide what's best for them. And naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black has packed Rough Greens full of vitamins, minerals, digestive enzymes, omega oils, and more that supplement their food in a way that has shown us great results. Trying out Rough Greens is an easy yes, recommended by me, Dr. G.
Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black here, and I'm so proud that the Pragers and Sebastian Gorka have entrusted their dog's health to Rough Greens. I'm so confident that Rough Greens can help your dog, I'm offering you a free Jumpstart trial bag. Just cover the shipping. Yes, your dog's food is dead food, but you can bring it back to life with Rough Greens. Go to ruffgreens.com.
United Nations says...
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm News 4 meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. On and off showers will continue through the early evening before eventually exiting the area. Temperatures tonight will steadily drop to a low 42 degrees, and then tomorrow scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible in the afternoon, highs reaching 67. More heavy rain moves in Thursday into Friday, and Friday is now a first alert weather day as there is a risk for some minor flooding with that rain. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by The Dental Link. Call Dr. Alan Link today, 314-794-6464 to schedule your free consultation. Offices in Baldwin and Melville, 314-794-6464.
The Herzog Foundation is the vision of its founder, Stanley Herzog, and it exists to promote and accelerate the development of quality Christ-centered K-12 education.
Hi, this is Daryl Jones, president of the Herzog Foundation. Our primary goal is to advance Christian education so that families and culture flourish. The legacy of Stan's business career centers around making national transit ecosystems accessible and sustainable. Likewise, the legacy of Stan's philanthropy centers around making the ecosystems of Christian education more accessible and sustainable for families across the nation. Visit HerzogFoundation.com to learn more about our programs, including trainings, scholarships, conferences, news, and our podcast, Making the Leap.
Visit HerzogFoundation.com to learn more and sign up for The Lion, an initiative of the Herzog Foundation that carries articles covering a wide range of issues facing American families and culture. HerzogFoundation.com.
This is what's happening.
Silicon Valley Bank.
Call it a bailout. The banking system is safe.
It is a serious problem.
Does DHS have operational control of our entire border?
No, sir. 1019 and 94.1.
Close the border.
News Talk STL. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
It doesn't matter if this was President Trump or if this was a Democrat. It should be equal justice in America. And stop going after people because you have political differences. I see people all the time that I have political differences. I respect their opinion. I may disagree with it, but why would you ever try to use the law for it? And it goes directly against everything that this Manhattan DA has professed. He brags about lowering felonies to misdemeanors and not prosecuting. We've watched crime in New York where people are afraid to walk the streets. We watched campaigns, and I will tell you, one of the reasons we won races in New York is based upon this DA of not protecting the citizens of New York.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. It is 4:06. That was a long clip, but I think Speaker McCarthy just about summed it up there, Tim. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think the problems. Look, Chris, if this was legitimate, I think you would have a lot more people saying it is so. You've got a lot of you've got a lot of legal experts on all sides of the political legal spectrum saying this is just an abuse of process. Senator Rand Paul went to the Senate floor today to talk about such things. And Chris, if Bragg was sitting around doing and had nothing else to do, maybe we could justify him looking into some of these things regarding Donald Trump. But the problem is Bragg has a city that is basically becoming the murder and mayhem capital of the East Coast. You would think he would have more things to do than investigate Donald Trump for the 3,000th time.
Well, our next guest has a very unique perspective on all of this because he worked for the former president of the United States. Joining us is Hogan Gidley, former principal deputy press secretary for Donald Trump, and he is America First Policy Institute's advisor for communications. Hogan, how are you, sir?
Doing really well, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Well, you know, the elephant in the room, of course, is the possible indictment of former President Trump. You know, I've said here that I can't believe that the former president's going to be fingerprinted, mugshotted, the whole nine for making a campaign contribution, according to them, to a porn actress in order to cover it up. We're bordering on a banana republic. Hogan, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, you guys are absolutely right. This is so ridiculous for a million reasons. Just the legal problems they have, first of all. The statute of limitations is gone. This isn't a state crime. The allegations would be one for a federal crime. If they're going to get this thing right, they're going to have to rely on, if they're going to do anything to Donald Trump, I should say. It wouldn't be right to do it, but if they're going to, they're going to have to rely on the testimony of a convicted felon in Michael Cohen, not to mention the fact they're going to have to, talk to someone in Michael Cohen who also said he lied to Congress. So, again, all types of problems legally, but politically, what you're doing is you're weaponizing the government against a private citizen. And they have now done this time and time again. We've seen it with Twitter files and the censorship of people. We've seen it with the J6 stuff. We've seen it with Russia going after our president. And I got to be honest, the last time Donald Trump's popularity spiked above 50% was in August of last year. What happened in August of last year? It was the Mar-a-Lago raid. The American people don't have any patience for a government that goes after, concocts stories, and tries to smear anyone in this country, not to mention the chief political rival for the sitting president of the United States. And so I think there are a whole host of problems here. The fallout of this is going to be very, very difficult for a long time coming, actually, for the Democrats. They're going to have to face the music here. But I will say this, Chris. Mm-hmm. If Donald Trump is, in fact, indicted, which we expect him to be, I think, sometime tomorrow, if he is sent to jail and they have to take a mugshot, it will be the most handsome, most masculine picture, any mugshot in the history of America. Many people are saying.
Will it be a red tie?
Oh, I would imagine so.
Okay.
I would imagine so.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be an open collar shirt, but either way, it's going to be the best mugshot of all time. No question.
Hogan, Tim here. Thanks for joining us once again. Hogan, you pointed out some of the many pitchers of lemonade that the Republican Party and especially Donald Trump can make of this. I really think, Hogan, the Democrats and Alvin Bragg did not completely think this through for many of the reasons you just described, and the fact that, Hogan, now the entire country's attention can be turned to how much damage these Soros-funded left-wing lunatic prosecutors are causing the country, right, Hogan? We've got one here in St. Louis, Kim Gardner. They've got one up in Chicago, Kim Fox. There's several out on the left coast. George Gascon, I believe, comes to mind. And, of course,
Sure.
Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. Hogan, they're going to show the country how dangerous that they truly are. And, there could be some political retribution for them down the line, right?
How dangerous and how incompetent. I mean, you guys talked in the opening segment before you introduced me about how the legal community pretty much is in lockstep here. They're arm in arm saying that this case is quote unquote legally pathetic. I heard somebody say the other day, I think it was Jonathan Turley. Other people pointing out the fact that they didn't have any of the evidence they claim to have, and Bragg doesn't have a real big record of winning these types of things. So it's not just the blowback from the politics. It's just, it reminds people how incompetent they are. And again, if life in New York hadn't seen a 22% increase in violent crime in the last year, if the people in New York, hadn't seen felonies reduced to misdemeanors so that violent criminals wouldn't go to jail, then maybe you could see him going after, a political opponent. Maybe. But the fact is, all of these DAs across the country funded by Soros, they're doing a disservice to the people they're supposed to be representing. Crime is spiking everywhere. People are less safe. And you got these clowns out there deciding they're going to go after political opponents. He can say what he wants, Bragg. But the fact is, he doesn't have anything here, and the legal community agrees. But as you pointed out, I think astutely, the political blowback here is going to be pretty massive. And I would argue it would be with independents and with the left, too, who stands up and goes, wait a minute, hold on. You went after him for what? Now, there'll be people on the left who say this is the end-all, be-all, that Donald Trump should be executed, given the gas chamber, given the electric chair for a misdemeanor. But a vast majority of the people in this country, I think, are going to be quite confused as to why he was brought to this point in the first place. And it's another in a long line of attacks and smears that went after Donald Trump's family, that went after his businesses, that went after his staff, obviously him personally. And every time they do this with Russia, and 1 and 2 impeachments, they don't have the goods. They don't have what they claim to have. The J6 committee was a sham. They said they could link Donald Trump directly to it. That obviously didn't happen. So this whole thing is a joke. And I think the American people are pretty sick and tired of weaponization here of these agencies and of the government against private citizens.
Speaking with Hogan Gidley, former principal deputy press secretary for the Trump administration. Hogan, you're an old communications guy. I want to ask you about the flare-up that happened the other day at the White House briefing room.
Arps. Just say communications guy. Old into it. Don't bring old into it.
I mean that with all the dearest affection. But you're a communications guy. What's your thought on KGP? I think I've got the initials in the correct order. What do you think of her blowing up at the African reporter who, for months, she will not call on him and he feels he's ignored?
Yeah, and look, that was a scene. What's interesting to me, though, is the people in the room. These journalists, they do usually support their own. It's hard-pressed to find a time in which, when we were in the White House, that they took the side of the administration. They always took the side of the reporters in the room. But it seems like, for whatever reason, with this one reporter, even though that people in the administration travel to Africa, he's still not allowed to ask questions. It seems like he doesn't have his questions answered, after the briefings via email, which is what you have to do because you can't take every single person's question. So sometimes you get some, via email. You have to answer it that way. But it's just a very odd look for the White House to not stand up for quote-unquote free speech. Because remember, we were told on good authority that if you even question a journalist, for heaven's sakes, if you didn't call on them, that you were somehow against the Constitution and you were threatening journalists. It seems like this administration does so on a daily basis, and I'm waiting for the outcry. I'm waiting for the people to be upset inside that briefing room and say, wait a minute, hold on. This guy has a point. Answer his question. But, they only want to call them the friendly, so I guess that's part of it.
Can I give you some advice there, Hogan? Do not hold your breath waiting for them, please.
That's very fair. That's very fair.
Go ahead, Tim.
Hogan, following up on that, I mean, in all seriousness, this has to be one of the most authoritarian regimes we've ever seen in the White House, right, Hogan? I mean, whether it's not answering reporters' questions, whether it's not ever having a press conference, not that Joe Biden could probably get through one at this point in time, whether it's telling Americans what cars they can drive, what experimental vaccines they have to take, whether they can have a gas stove in their homes or not.
Yeah.
I mean, Hogan, we're witnessing. I mean, the Democratic Party, the old Democratic Party of old, is dead, right? And this is a new authoritarian type of leftism that Americans really need to pay attention to what's going on, because it's kind of terrifying.
It is. You make such a good point, and it's something we talked about in the past, which is, the left always blames conservatives, always blames Republicans for things they themselves are guilty of actually doing. So when they blame Donald Trump for collusion in Russia, it's actually the left who used a British spy to get information from Russia. Like, the whole thing is a joke in the sense that they're always the ones doing the things that they accuse us of doing. And you hit on it, because with these authoritarian moves, with these Marxist, socialist, communist moves they make, they're the ones that are suppressing information. They're the ones who want to shut down free speech, and they claim it's our fault. You saw that with Twitter files, collusion with the federal government, and all those types of things. So this is a real problem for them. And I think, thanks to peeling back some of the curtains, if you will, to see behind the scenes, the American people now are seeing it too, and they're realizing, wait a minute, this game seems to be pretty rigged, and we know that the left has all the major power levers of power and influence with the big tech and the Hollywood and the colleges and universities and the mainstream media, of course. But you're seeing this in a way that they want absolute power, and that's what this alleged or I guess potential probable indictment's all about. Anyone who dares think their own thoughts, think the wrong thoughts, protest the wrong things, show up to the wrong movies, attend the wrong speeches, listen to the wrong speakers, go to the wrong websites, they want to take you down. They don't want dissent. They don't want free thought. They don't want free speech. And on top of that, they want to be the ones on the left with the power, with the blunt force of the government, to take everything away from you that gives you those freedoms that are outlined not just by the Constitution, but that are given to us by God.
Hogan, I want to apologize to you. I have an old sheet here, and doesn't have that you are the vice chair for voter election integrity at AFPI. And, we had the great pleasure of doing a press conference with you a couple of weeks ago in Washington. It was on the eve of Washington, D.C. allowing non-citizen voting in their elections. Had a great time seeing you. Talk a little bit about that. It was great seeing you. I just hate that you stiffed us for dinner, but other than that, it was great. Great seeing you.
Well, I live in an ascot-free zone, so I wasn't sure if you were going to be able to make dinner. I didn't want to go out there and then you get turned away. Look, it was a good event. Thanks for putting it on, Chris. And people need to hear that, because what the left is basically saying, well, not basically, they are saying, is that people who are not Americans should be allowed to vote in American elections. And that is just insane. And the legislation, the bill, the edict that passed here in D.C. allows people who are from Russia, who are from China, getting paid by the governments of those nations to vote in our elections. They're not citizens here. They're visiting here. They're on visas here. They're ambassadors here, and they get to vote in our elections. The whole thing is ridiculous. And I'm old enough to remember when I was told on good authority that anybody from a foreign country meddling in our elections is a bad thing. And of course it is. But now the left wants people from Russia and from China and from Iraq to be able to vote in our elections. It makes absolutely no sense. And of course, it cancels out everyone else's vote. who lives and works and dies in America. It makes no sense whatsoever.
Hey, I just want to say, too, that Hogan did not stiff us. Hogan didn't see my text. He had a Newsmax appearance, I think, in the morning, and you went to bed at, 6:30?
Yeah, that's about right. That's about right.
Hogan, what do you want to direct our listeners to? What's going on at AFPI that we should be aware of?
Well, we just put out a statement on this ridiculous potential pending indictment, of course. But keep an eye on things like ranked choice voting, which is a scourge. It's kind of sweeping across the country. We've had some good legislation to beat that back from the America First Policy Institute, the Center for Election Integrity. Obviously, focusing on the scourge of fatherlessness in the homes in this country too. Our China policy is really picking up a lot of steam, and we're talking to legislators at the local level and at the federal level for school choice as well. So a lot of the big issues that really kind of are shaping not just our current situation, but our future and our future generations are coming right through the America First Policy Institute. Because, look, the information and data we're giving these folks, reminding them how important they are, it's not just that they're important issues, they're successful issues. And they're extremely popular. I mean, 80% of the country basically believes with the tenets that we're pushing at AFPI. So for us, heading into these local legislative sessions, and of course paying attention to the federal government is always an issue, but making sure that the people understand what policies will really impact their lives in a positive way is what we're all about. So anytime you pop over our website, anytime you check us out on socials, that's kind of what you're hearing.
And what's that website, sir?
AmericaFirstPolicy.com.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gidley. I hope that you'll join us again soon, especially if we hear some news on the possible indictment of the president. I would love to get your thoughts exclusively, sir, if you don't mind.
Cannot wait. I think it's going to be a big day for this country and a big day for the future of this country. If we can get this figured out, I think we'll be in good shape. But hopefully this rogue DA doesn't go through with it, but we'll see.
Hopefully we may talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day, Hogan.
Thanks, y'all.
All right. Hey, when we come back, Tim will talk with Dave Stokes. There's a couple of tax increases in St. Charles County, as we talked with Bob Onder about, and here in St. Louis County that are on the ballot. And Dave Stokes, Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute, will discuss that with us when we come back on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm News 4 meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. On and off showers will continue through the early evening before eventually exiting the area. Temperatures tonight will steadily drop to a low 42 degrees, and then tomorrow scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible in the afternoon, highs reaching 67. More heavy rain moves in Thursday into Friday, and Friday is now a first alert weather day as there is a risk for some minor flooding with that rain. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Better than nothing? The bill to protect kids from so-called transgender treatment passes, but it doesn't protect everybody permanently. I'll explain on Wednesday.
Mornings starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL.
You know, folks, a great place to watch March Madness or the upcoming Masters or the start of the Major League Baseball season to cheer on our St. Louis Cardinals would be, of course, my favorite haunt, Johnny's Hideout, the best and newest St. Louis sports bar experience with over 30 huge big screen TVs, a fantabulous game room, and two, not one, but two fantastic outdoor patios. And with spring about to be sprung, folks, with this weather improving every single week, they're going to be having their grand opening right around the corner, but you can go check out those patios and everything else I just mentioned at Johnny's Hideout today. It really is a great place to watch a game, any game, no matter where you are in Johnny's, you've got a vantage point for one of the big screens. They also have a fantastic menu. Oh, my mouth's watering thinking about it. Serving up the famous Johnny Douse chicken wings every single day, along with some of the finest, best barbecue in town. An entire fancy hot dog section, Cajun wrap sandwiches, a pork steak you can cut with a fork, and so much more. Open 6 days a week, serving lunch and dinner. Johnny's is available on the web 24/7 at jhideout.com. They're on Facebook at Johnny's Hideout STL. That's Johnny's Hideout in gorgeous High Ridge, 10 minutes from 270 and Gravois. jhideout.com. That's jhideout.com.
It's Proctor spelled like doctor for custom window fabrics and shutters. Upgrade or start from scratch. Either way, Michael is the St. Louis expert. Check him out at proctordrapery.com and then call Proctor spelled like doctor for shutters, shades, and draperies.
Proctor Drapery, the best in town. No finer window fashion can be found. Call for an appointment at your home. Spell Proctor like doctor.
Hey, Tony Colombo here for Gutter Pros. When Christine and I bought our new house, we knew the gutters were an issue, and after meeting the Gutter Pros team, we knew that they were right for us. Gutter Pros is your all-in-one gutter service team that offers a variety of affordable solutions, and they even offer free estimates, so there's no cost to you to find out if they are right for your home, just like they were for ours. If you're having a problem with your gutters, contact the Gutter Pros now, because with Gutter Pros, water goes where they tell it to. Call them at 314-656-7195 or visit gutterpros.com.
Now, the Onder Prescription with Dr. Bob Onder.
I'm Dr. Bob Onder. As I record this commentary, the Missouri Senate is debating Senator Mike Moon's SAFE Act, a bill to protect children from the abuse of grooming, dangerous hormones, and mutilating surgeries engaged in by the so-called pediatric gender centers. The debate is quite revealing. The Democrats' opposition to this common-sense bill seems to be based on their subservience to the radical gender activists who want to exploit our kids. One Democrat even asserted that there is a constitutional right to mutilate children. At the same time, Senate's so-called leadership has been playing bizarre procedural games, hoping that no one is watching, such as taking the SAFE Act away from its sponsor, Senator Mike Moon, and giving it to one of his flunkies. Call Senate President Caleb Rowden at 573-751-3931 and tell him to stop the games and protect the kids. I'm Dr. Bob, and that's my prescription.
Find more Dr. Bob Onder at bobondermo.com. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Follow Chris Arps on Twitter at Chris_Arps.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. My partner, Tim Jones, if you're watching on the studio cam, is not in studio with me. He is remote, but he is joining the show. And Tim, how are you?
Doing great here, Chris. It was a beautiful day here in the Smoky Mountains, around 55 degrees, a little sunshine today. We did a little hiking today. And yeah, it's just a beautiful little place in the world. If people haven't been here before, I highly encourage you. You can get here from St. Louis in about 8 hours. It's not bad at all.
Well, our next guest says that he has been there, and I want to point out that our next guest has yet to bring in the Spike haircut pictures.
I keep forgetting that.
Oh, well, he's very popular. They think he's a righteous dude.
David Stokes over at the Show Me Institute.
In high school, you talk about spike. I had a very short spike. It was
I knew there's some spike somewhere in there doing some spike stuff.
It wasn't very punky. It was more Leave It to Beaver-ish, maybe.
And as he does every Tuesday, David Stokes, Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute and former Spike haircut wearer, joins us in studio today. David, how are you, sir?
Good afternoon, Chris. Good afternoon, Tim. I'm jealous of you in Gatlinburg, Tim. I've been to Gatlinburg many times. You know, my wife is from Knoxville, and her parents still live there. So we have taken plenty of family trips visiting her family down to the Gatlinburg area, the Dolly Dollywood, and the lesser known but even more awesome Dollywood Water Park, which is very near Dollywood. That is a fantastic water park.
For some reason, I always thought Jen was a St. Louisan. No, hey,
she is not.
Did not know that. Hey,
we just learned something.
We
today.
did
That's
learn
fantastic.
something today. We can just really shut the show down and go home because we've learned something personal about David Stokes.
Happy hour.
David, we have Dr. Bob Onder on about 4 o'clock, or a little about 3:45, and of course he's a St. Charles County resident, and I wanted to ask him about this proposed online sales tax that voters in St. Charles County will be voting on. I guess proponents of it would say it's just a 1% tax, and fairness is fair. If you buy something in a brick and mortar, or if you buy it online, you should have to pay the tax. Is that a good argument, Mr. Stokes?
Yeah, the use tax arguments are a lot of fun because it's one of those debates where I think there's good arguments on both sides. And I certainly think there's ways to do use taxes, and I'll get into that in a second, where the arguments in favor of them carry the day, I think. So a use tax, as you were just talking with Senator/Dr. Onder about, is simply a sales tax on the goods you purchase online. They've actually existed in Missouri for a long time. They predate the internet, but before the internet, most cities and counties never bothered to have voters approve them because it didn't raise much money out of the Sears catalog. But now they do. So St. Charles has it on the ballot, and it's I don't know the exact percent in St. Charles, but it should be the same as whatever the St. Charles City municipal tax rate is. So it's usually about 2% at the municipal level. But some cities do vary it slightly for things that I won't get into. So it'd be about 2%. And yeah, the arguments for the use tax so that it levels the playing field between your brick and mortar businesses and your online purchases. The argument for it is that you're expanding your tax base, which is always a good thing. So those are two strong reasons for it, and there are a few others. What we like to see when cities or counties propose it is at some level, and the city or the county to say, look, we're not just going to raise this as some windfall for local government here. I would say the exact same thing about marijuana taxes as well. It shouldn't just be a windfall for local government. Let's use this as an opportunity to expand your tax base, in this case on the use tax in St. Charles, or Chesterfield or Town and Country or Maryland Heights, and we can get into more cities that have it on the April ballot. But let's at the same time maybe try to get rid of other more harmful taxes so that you can really maybe grow your revenue a little bit, improve your economic environment a little bit, and raise a little bit of more revenue. That's the way you really win-win-win on this situation.
David, every time because you and I and Chris are such public policy wonks, we probably always think of things like, what's state public policy in this state that I'm visiting? And David, every time I come down to Tennessee, I am always reminded, because of what you see in this state of what's going on here, that Tennessee is a no income tax state. They also have very few other taxes on people's labors or fortunes or the way that they make in life. They've been notable for cutting out all kinds of taxes over the last many years. They're a right to work state. They have a very vigorous education reform package available to parents all across the volunteer state. David, I heard in the Missouri House today that they advanced a corporate income tax cut for all businesses, not some kind of special favor tax credit giveaway, but a corporate income tax across the board, and an additional reduction in our personal income tax for all Missouri taxpayers. David, is that good public policy to proceed with? And isn't Tennessee kind of the state that shows the proof is in the pudding on those items?
Yes, and yes. I mean, all the way across the board. And we wrote a paper about 15 years ago at Show Me Institute, sort of comparing Missouri to Tennessee and saying, if you go back 60, 70 years, Missouri was a much larger, more prosperous state than Tennessee. And now, the situation is reversed. We're fairly comparable states, but it's nice to compare Missouri to Tennessee because, when you talk about no taxes and states with no income taxes, Alaska and Texas have oil. Florida has tourism and beaches. Not every state is a great comparison to Missouri, but Tennessee is. We were border states. We've a lot of comparable aspects. So it's a good state to compare to, and they've really been growing. Nashville as a city, but also the state as a whole, growing and thriving for the last several decades with a lot of great leadership. And nobody would say the only reason is a state tax policy. But on the other hand, it's part of the reason. It's absolutely part of the reason why Tennessee is really growing so much for these past several decades, the lack of any state income tax there. Now, you go to Tennessee, if you're going to buy, trust me, when my in-laws come to St. Louis, they buy their alcohol here. they're gonna get you one way or the other. And one of the ways they have in Tennessee is high alcohol taxes. But that's all right, because that doesn't punish work. That doesn't punish investment. That's an example of funding government with consumption, and particularly on something that you should not be using a great deal of. And I have no problem with people drinking alcohol. The problem is when you drink too much of it, of course. So that said, yeah, Tennessee is doing great. We go to Tennessee. I was actually there on Saturday night coming back from Florida. We stayed at my wife's siblings' house in Memphis on the way back. It's doing great. We're going back next month for another weekend, and it is an excellent example. And what they did in the state house, cutting the state corporate income tax and cutting slightly the state individual income tax, is great movement in the right direction, and the state house deserves a lot of credit for it, and I hope it goes all the way through.
Speaking with David Stokes, Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute. Dave, I want to talk about another tax increase, potential tax increase that's on the ballot. It is Valdez City, population of 1,400 people, according to the 2010 census. They are looking at imposing a large utility tax. What's your thoughts on it?
I'm delighted to talk about this. I love talking about these sort of local issues in our region. So most people in the area, just about everybody, pay a utility tax. A utility tax is nothing more than a sales tax on your gas, water, and electric bill. They're called utility taxes because they predate general sales taxes, so they have their own term. So we all pay them, and Valdez City usually it ranges between like 4 and 7%. And Valdez City is proposing a 10% utility tax for the people of Valdez City, which is not a wealthy area. I think that's just way too high. So there's a number of problems with it. One is just the size of it, that many of the people of Valdez City on working class, lower income people, and now you're going to whack them every time they get their utility bill with a 10% tax. I think that's terrible policy. The other troubling aspect of it is that this utility tax in Valdez City, like so many of these use taxes on the ballot next April in Chesterfield and Maryland Heights and Town and Country and Fenton, and I think all four of them. I feel terrible if I miss one. But they were just voted on by the people of those cities. For example, last April, 1 year ago, the people of Valdez City voted this utility tax down. Yet here the city leaders in Valdez City come right back and say, well, you were wrong. We're going to put it on the ballot again. They have a marijuana tax on the ballot at the same time, and I have nothing wrong with that. I don't know if there's a dispensary now in Valdez City or if they'll have one in the future. But if they do, I think that marijuana tax is a good idea. But to go to these, just in Maryland Heights, just last November, it was 5 months ago that the voters rejected a use tax. And now in 2 weeks in April, they're going to be asked to vote on it again. I think that's terrible. And State Rep Ben Keithley has a bill in Jefferson City, which was just heard in committee today, and we testified on it. You can see it at showmeinstitute.org, to support a moratorium on these tax votes, that when people vote them down, when voters shoot one down, either a new tax or a tax increase, that cities and counties can't just go right back to putting it on the ballot within a year, that he would place a couple-year moratorium on it, and I think that's the right thing to do. It's insulting, I think, to whether the people of Maryland Heights or Valdez City or Chesterfield. St. Charles, we discussed their use tax. They did not have a recent use tax, so they're off the hook. But, I mean, Chesterfield, these places that the voters just shot it down, and yet the city officials think they know better, so they're just going to put it on again, hope turnout is low enough to pass it this time. I think that's poor public policy.
David, the Show Me Institute has an event coming up with Wall Street Journal columnist and Fox contributor Jason Riley. When is that? And give us more details.
It's April 19th. It's I think it's early evening. It's at St. Louis University. We used to have a lot of these events with St. Louis U's Business School pre-COVID, but with COVID and all, it's sort of we've gone away from it. But I'm excited to be bringing it back. We often get a very good turnout. The events are a lot of fun. Jason Riley's talking about his new biography of America's great economist, Thomas Sowell. And it's going to be, I think he's going to give a great talk on a great, interesting subject. And it's open for anybody to attend. You can go to showmeinstitute.org, get all the information to register with St. Louis U and the Show Me Institute. And I hope a lot of people come out. It's, as far as I think it's free. Okay. I'm pretty sure it's free to attend. If I'm wrong, the only way I'm wrong is if it's like $10, but I'm pretty sure it's free. and it's, really, these have been a lot of fun. They put some food out for people to come in and have a little social bit before the talk. So I hope a lot of your listeners and fans of the Show Me Institute and fans of the show can all come out and participate in it.
David, thank you so much for your time, and I expect next Tuesday to have the pictures from high school with the spike haircut. You've been promising those for probably a year now, and you have not produced.
I will do so.
Thank you.
I will not forget. I gotta go back to the high school yearbook, pull it out, and bring it all in for you.
You promised.
SLU High Class of '90, everyone.
All right, David Stokes, Director of Municipal Policy at the Show Me Institute. We'll see you next week. When we come back, Krista's Corner, and we'll have some news on the gay mafia, as they call them, and one brave man in a professional sports league who is standing up. I'll give my thoughts on that when we come back. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps, driving the leftist crazy all afternoon. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm News 4 meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. On and off showers will continue through the early evening before eventually exiting the area. Temperatures tonight will steadily drop to a low 42 degrees, and then tomorrow scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible in the afternoon, highs reaching 67. More heavy rain moves in Thursday into Friday, and Friday is now a first alert weather day as there is a risk for some minor flooding with that rain. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
This is so stupid.
St. Louis's.
Okay, I'm hanging up on you now.
Place to talk. News Talk STL.
Hey, folks, if you've been putting off contacting Hanson's Tree Service over the last couple of months, well, you got 10 days left to take care of their winter early spring special. That's 10% off all tree care services performed up until March 31st. Can you believe March 31st is right around the bend? Tim Jones here for my good friends Chad Hanson and all of the fantastic people over at Hanson's Tree Service. You know, this special includes all removals, trim and pruning, deadwood removal, stump grinding, anything in and around the homestead, the exterior of your yard. You can get it cleaned up right now and save 10% while you're doing it. Another thing you can do and should do right now is take advantage of the massive piles of quickly depleting, may I say, Hanson's mulch. I was out at Hanson's a couple weeks ago, and Chad took me around in the truck and showed me all these huge mulch pods and said, Tim, I know this looks like mountains of mulch. It's going to be all gone within a few weeks. So get some of that fantastic organic mulch from Hanson's before it is, and the stockpiles have to be replenished. Hanson's is available 24/7, of course, at hansonstree.com. You can give them a call anytime, 636-379-1830. That's 636-379-1830. Call today, get that 10% offer. Just mention you heard us. You heard the ad here at News Talk STL. Visit them 24/7 at hansonstree.com. That's hansonstree.com.
Report cards are a good way to show how well your kids are doing in class and where they might need improvement. We at the Show Me Institute believe schools should get grades too, so parents can see how their child's school compares to others. That's why we came up with the Missouri School Rankings Project. Click on the website moschoolrankings.org and it's all there. Rankings and letter grades for all the schools in Missouri. The rankings are based on categories such as student performance in English language arts and math, ACT scores, and graduation rates. Then we take the rankings and come up with a grade point average, just like your child has. Each school and district has a grade, and the website is easy to use. And now we've added spending data for every district, so parents, taxpayers, and policymakers can see where the money is going. Don't you want to know how your child's school stacks up? Learn more at showmeinstitute.org. The Show Me Minute has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
Hey, it's Tony Colombo reminding you to do what we did and get the jump on spring cleaning by calling Zero Res today. After the beating dished out by kids, the dog, and just general traffic, our home would not be the same without Zero Res. And right now, you can get 3 rooms of carpet cleaned starting at just $119. Plus, they'll throw in a free hallway and take $75 off an air duct cleaning if you just mention the Colombo special. Call and book now at 314-474-2020 or book online at ZeroResSTL.com.
The Rob Carter Show.
How good is that Pure Cure coffee? Are you loving it?
Oh, yeah.
Pure Cure coffee is fantastic. What I like about this coffee, other than the multiple flavors, and I love the smell. You know, my wife and I get up every morning, we have the Pure Cure coffee. I love the taste. Listen, it's better coffee. PureCureCoffee.com. PureCure coffee.com. Get yourself some. It is fresh, delicious coffee, multiple flavors. Pure Cure Coffee. Get some. PureCureCoffee.com. PureCure coffee.com.
Larry Connors, USA.
It's not uncommon today for young people to try out different labels in search of their truth.
In search of their truth or following your indoctrination.
Larry Connors.
Which came first?
Weeknights at 6 on News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
Smoky Mountain rain keeps on falling.
We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL.
And welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show. Well, we've had a great show so far. We've had Dr. Bob Onder. We've had Hogan Gidley. Of course, we just had David Stokes from the Show Me Institute. If you missed any of the great conversation, you can always go to our website, newstalkstl.com. You can listen to the podcast. All of our shows are podcasts, so you can always go back and listen. Mr. Speaker, how are you?
Doing great today, Chris. You know, I found, I want to thank Joey for playing that oldie but goodie from good old Ronnie Millsap. Chris, there's more songs about the Smoky Mountains in eastern Tennessee that you'd think, and I know you would know a lot of them. They're from our generation and maybe even younger than us. There was a great tune by Johnny Cash, A Boy Named Sue, that has an eastern Tennessee connection to it. Don't Let Smoky Mountain Smoke It in Your Eyes. Who sang that? The Osborne Brothers did that one. Smoky Mountain Rain by Ronnie Millsap. My Tennessee Mountain Home, of course, Dolly Parton was born in this part of the country. And then Rocky Top, good old Rocky Top, Tennessee. So
very
article about
a songs. Very beautiful area. We have driven through the Smoky Mountains on our way to South Carolina to visit Becky's dad. It's always very scenic because
you go through here quite a bit.
We do because we don't really see mountains where we live in St. Louis. So it's always beautiful going to South Carolina and through there. Hey, let's get into Chris's Corner before we went to break. I told you that the gay mafia, of course, has invaded sports, but one brave athlete stood up, and we're going to applaud him and talk about his story next on Chris's Corner.
Chris.
The whole thing is a joke.
Good God, we gotta do something here, people.
It's not personal. It's strictly business.
My favorite black leader of all time is Frederick Douglass, who asked after emancipation, well, we just freed the blacks, now what are we going to do with them? And his answer was, leave us alone.
And if you don't know, now you know.
And now, Chris's Corner.
You know, I've done a couple of Chris's Corners so far, and this will be the third, on a book that I found from my youth, which was a 1977 Time in Review book We received that in 1978 when we got a subscription to Time magazine. But as I flip through it, it's such a nostalgic trip down memory lane. Of course, it talks about Jimmy Carter. He was the president then, and the promise of his presidency. Star Wars was released that year, and what a blockbuster that movie was. Also it shows pictures of the historic peace accord that was signed between Egypt and Israel. That was the first Arab country to make a peace deal with the Israeli state. And then, if you're old enough to remember, how can you not remember Reggie Jackson hitting 3 consecutive home runs in the 1977 series? This book went through the whole gamut of sports, politics, but it also focused on culture. And there was a show that began in 1977 called Soap, which was a very controversial show because it dealt with adult themes that weren't usually discussed at that time of television. I can remember being in 5th and 6th grade, and our parents would never let us watch it because it came on at 9 o'clock on ABC. But one thing that really made that show famous, and what was the first, is they had the first gay character on Soap. It's where really Billy Crystal made his name and became famous. And it really started the acceptance of the gay lifestyle within our culture. It took many, many years, of course, to get to the point where gay marriage was accepted, and we are now. But I have to say, if you have to look back on the point of where it gradually became accepted by the broader culture, I'd have to say that TV show. Look, every person deserves to live the life the way that they want to live their life, as long as they're not affecting anyone else. You shouldn't be harassed because you are gay. You shouldn't be discriminated in jobs. If you are gay, that is a terrible thing. And I think America has come a long way, as it has in race relations, in relations between the sexes, and even in relations regarding homosexuals and heterosexuals. I think that relationship has come a long way where it is accepted to a sense. But as with most things dealing with progressives and liberals, they just can't accept their victories and leave us alone. Now they have to force this upon you, their lifestyle, and if you don't accept it, you are either a homophobe or you are just a hateful person. And it's very fiendish the way that they set this up. Is one that if you don't agree with the homosexual lifestyle, one, as I said, you are a homosexual and a bigot. And because most likely the reason that you are against it is because you're a Christian, they can also point to the fact that look at what a hateful, unforgiving judging Christianity is because you don't accept this lifestyle. Well, as I said prior to starting Chris's Corner, there is a hockey player the other night. I think he plays for the Sharks, San Jose Sharks, who stood up and said that he was not going to wear the gay apparel that his team wanted him to wear. I think there are 3 other teams in the NHL that refuse to play along with this. And I just want to read part of his statement and show and applaud this young man for standing up for him and for other Christians who believe as he does. He said, quote, "Under the umbrella of the NHL's Hockey is for Everyone initiative, the San Jose Sharks have chosen to wear jerseys in support of the LGBTQIA+ community tonight. For all 13 years of my career, I've been a Christian, not just in title, but in how I choose to live my life daily. I have a personal faith in Jesus Christ, who died on the cross for my sins, and in response asked me to love everyone and follow him. I have no hate in my heart for anyone, and I have always strived to treat everyone that I encountered with respect and kindness. In this specific instance, I am choosing not to endorse something that is counter to my personal convictions, which are based in the Bible, the highest authority in my life. I strongly believe that every person has value and worth, and the LGBTQIA+ community, like all others, should be welcomed in all aspects of the game of hockey." I don't think it could have been said any better than that. This man should not be castigated because he doesn't want to be forced to go something against his convictions. As he said, this doesn't make him a homophobe. This doesn't make him hateful. This just goes against his heartfelt convictions. And I applaud this hockey goalie for standing up for him and for the millions of Christians in this country that believe as he does. And that is Chris's Corner.
Chris, we learned a couple little axioms in law school, and it applies directly. Two of them apply directly to all that you just said. One of them was was more serious. It was your rights are supposed to be a sword. Are supposed to be a shield for you, not a sword as against me.
Yes.
And the second one was a little more comical in nature. It was your rights stop at my nose. Basically, Chris, you don't get to force your rights, whatever you may have. And you may have those rights 100% of the time, but you don't get to force others to do things that they don't want to do. And I think that's exactly what that player was talking about, exactly as you discussed.
And Tim, they shouldn't be able to do it by physical force, and they shouldn't be able to do it by basically shaming you into doing it and trying to make you feel like you're an outsider or you're wearing some type of scarlet letter. Either one of those are wrong.
Couldn't agree more.
When we come back, Tim, we're going to have the speaker's stump speech, of course. Then we'll have Miles Yu, Senior Fellow and Director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute. He's a former China policy advisor to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Really want to get his perspective on what's going on right now in China with the Russian president, or the Chinese president visiting Russia. I'm laughing at the song that we're going on with.
I am
You're
too.
listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
West St. Louis County? Then you can get West News Magazine delivered free to your home just by asking for it. West News Magazine is the only print source for the political, school, business, and sports news happening in your hometown. Simply visit westnewsmagazine.com/subscribe or pick up a free copy at all area Deerbergs and Schnuck stores. West News Magazine. Anybody who wants it gets it. Anybody who gets it wants it. Subscribe for free today. Simply visit westnewsmagazine.com/subscribe.
Are you wanting to improve the look and efficiency of your home? Well, one of the best and easiest ways you can do that, get some new windows. Window World, simply the best for less. You can give them a call today at 314-993-1800. Over 20 years in the business in the St. Louis area, over 70,000 satisfied customers. That's because Window World uses double strength glass, gives it a strength not commonly used in replacement windows. They've got the Good Housekeeping seal of approval. They've got 18 months, same as cash financing. You can get them today. 314-993-1800, windowworld.com. That's windowworld.com.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness 101. Wellness 101 is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense, science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on News Talk STL. For more information, visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
Columbo and Katie.
How are we living in a world right now that every single thing feels like it's staged? Every single conversation, every single debate.
Because a lot of it is.
Every single argument.
It's the Instagramming of America. If you know how Instagram works, it's basically, this is the nice life simulator of reality, where you're supposed to take the very best pictures of your very best hair day.
Tony Columbo, Katie Fitzpatrick, weekdays at 2 on News Talk STL. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 101.9, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Jason Walker. All eyes on the District Attorney of Manhattan for the potential indictment of former President Donald Trump From New York City, White House correspondent Greg Clugston has more on the story.
Today is the day that Trump predicted that he would face criminal charges and be arrested, while a grand jury here in New York appears close to finishing its work on whether business records were falsified to cover up hush money payments. The next steps in the legal process remain unclear. Meanwhile, the city is preparing for possible demonstrations after the former president urged his supporters to protest. Metal barricades were dropped off to safeguard streets and sidewalks from any possible unrest. Greg Clugston, New York.
Also at townhall.com, correspondent Jennifer King reports some of the politicians pledging to look into the recent bank collapses in America are the same ones who voted to slash banking regulations just a few years ago.
Watchdog groups are pointing to a 2018 bill passed by a bipartisan group of Republicans working with Democrats to roll back regulations under the 2010 Dodd-Frank law. 3 Democrats who supported the bill collected over $250,000 each in campaign contributions. Last week, Senator John Tester of Montana, one of the core group who wrote the bill, pledged to take on anyone in Washington to ensure that the executives at these banks and regulators are held accountable. Also last week, he attended a fundraiser in Silicon Valley. One of the sponsors was a partner at a law firm for Silicon Valley Bank.
In the meantime, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen trying to project calm following the recent failures in California and New York. Now, she says additional bank rescue arrangements, quote, could be warranted if any new failures at smaller institutions pose a risk. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Relief Factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
My name is Jason Hansen. I'm a former CIA officer and New York Times bestselling author. You can protect your hard-earned retirement assets with a tax-free loophole that allows you to convert your retirement into physical gold and silver. Advantage Gold is the nation's highest-rated gold company. They have the best process, pricing, and service. If you want to get your free gold and silver investment kit, please contact Advantage Gold right now. Call 800-900-8000. That's 800-900-8000.
Advantage Gold is not an investment advisor or a tax advisor. Consult with your financial advisor before investing.
Call 800-900-8000.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm News 4 meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. On and off showers will continue through the early evening before eventually exiting the area. Temperatures tonight will steadily drop to a low 42 degrees, and then tomorrow scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible in the afternoon, highs reaching 67. More heavy rain moves in Thursday into Friday, and Friday is now a first alert weather day as there is a risk for some minor flooding with that rain. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
This is Adam Wainwright, and on Saturday, April 1st, we host the Blue Jays. That day, 25,000 fans ages 16 and older will take home a mystery bobblehead, courtesy of Central Bank, that features Molina or Pujols hitting home runs. April Fools! These bobbleheads will actually showcase both players trying to be like me, pitching. That Saturday, April 1st, the Cardinals, Blue Jays, and the Mystery Molina and Pujols pitching bobbleheads. Tickets available at Cardinals.com. Don't miss a legendary moment at Busch Stadium.
The Cardinals host the Blue Jays on Sunday, April 2nd, and that day, 25,000 fans ages 16 and older will take home their own long-sleeve hooded pullover. Everyone will want this gray, lightweight, and stylish pullover that features a Cardinals logo. Following the game, kids 15 and younger can participate in the High Chew Kids Run the Bases. That's Sunday, April 2nd, with the Cardinals and the Blue Jays. Great seats remain. Get yours at Cardinals.com.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
We need change in our country right now.
Live and local.
They clubbed us over the head for 2 years.
Yep. You want corruption? This is how we get corruption.
This is News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps brought to you by Window World. Simply the best for less. 314-993-1800 or visit windowworld.com. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
And look, I don't know what goes into paying hush money to a porn star to secure silence over some type of alleged affair. I can't speak to that. But what I can speak to is that if you have a prosecutor who is ignoring crimes happening every single day in his jurisdiction, and he chooses to go back many, many years ago to try to use something about porn star hush money payments, that's an example of pursuing a political agenda.
Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. That was Florida Governor Ron DeSantis after being asked about the possible indictment of President Trump. He defended the president, Tim, but he also kind of got a dig in there as well.
Yeah, Chris, I was like, oh, look at Ron DeSantis go. He's got he's got a little bit of sarcastic wit in him, a little early shot across the bow. Chris, if DeSantis ends up jumping into this presidential race that everybody expects him to, we might be in for a heck of a rocking and rolling good time with those two trading barbs back and forth.
I think we will, and they're both. And George W. Bush was very bad at that. They're both very good at counterpunching when it comes to their critics. Tim, at 5:24, we're going to be talking with Miles Yu. He's a senior fellow and director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute. He's, of course, also a former China policy advisor to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. With everything that's going around the world, and it seems to be China's hand and fingerprints are all over it. It'll be great to talk to him. Speaker Stump Speech, enlighten us.
Yes,
Give
sir.
us your wisdom.
I am ready to roll.
Listen to me, listen to me.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
So that's another reason we need communism.
It's time for the Speaker's Stump Speech, sponsored by Hanson's Tree Service at hansonstree.com.
Yeah, it'll be good to speak with Dr. Yu at 5:25, and all thanks to Katie for booking all of our guests, and we hope to have her back tomorrow. But yeah, Dr. Yu, boy, that's great considering that President Xi, whatever he calls himself, Supreme Leader Xi, visited with his fellow tyrant Putin. I just don't think that's a good look at all for the world. But anywho, we'll get to that in a minute. It's no secret that I have been in the great state of Tennessee, the volunteer state, over the last few days due to the wonders of remote technology and the ability to do radio pretty much anywhere in the world. Folks, if you listen to the Dan Bongino show, he's become a master at that because I believe Dan is at his home in Florida, I think around West Palm. He's built himself a studio there, and he's there. And one of his producers, I believe, is in Texas, and I think the other one may be in New York. And then Dan does the Fox News hits there. So it's really amazing that we're able to, if we need to, do a little radio on the road. And I think it gives a little flavor to the shows from time to time. Chris and I have both traveled as we are wont to do quite extensively over the last 2.5 years since we launched the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. And we've been able to bring you inside, front and center, to other places around the country. And we've been able to share those experiences with you. Look, I love the Show Me State. I love the great state of Missouri. It's why, after living in New York for nearly 10 years, going through undergrad there, law school, and getting a job there, I was fully employed in New York. I could have stayed there much longer, but I had a calling for home. So I moved back to St. Louis. I moved back to Missouri. And at that point, I guess I could have moved anywhere in the country, right? I was a I was a young attorney. I had lots of great experience. I was not married yet. I had passed the bar exams in New York, which is one of the hardest bar exams in the country, and also in Missouri. I could have probably taken that calling card and gone elsewhere, but I decided to move back home. It's where my folks were and still are. It's where my sister went back to. My brother does live in Kentucky, lives down the road in Louisville. I had so many friends from back in the day who had many who moved back home. So, I decided to go ahead and give Missouri a shot. And look, I remain to this day. I remain long on Missouri. I am positive on the Show Me State. But having visited so many other parts of the country, Chris and I are able to tell you about plenty of the good and about plenty of the bad. It's wonderful that our framers of our Constitution, the original forefathers and foremothers of this country, set up these 50 laboratories of democracy, these 50 states. So we can try many different things all at once. That is the beauty of our federalist system. So we're not all forced to live under one centralized planning authority. Look, folks, there have been plenty of countries around the globe over the last millennium that have tried centralized planning through one autocratic source. It does not work. The Soviet Union back in the early 1900s says, hey, we're going to try it when the Bolsheviks came in after the revolution. And, they tried to say, oh, you can create utopia. We can run everything from Moscow. Everybody can be equal. Yeah, under communism, everybody became equally miserable. There have been plenty of other examples around the globe. It's never worked. In the old days, it never worked. In the modern days, it never worked. And I'm telling you, I know China seems pretty powerful and is China rising right now. But I think with their kind of bizarre blend of kind of state-sponsored capitalism, I think eventually we're going to start seeing some cracks in that armor as well. And we already have. China is also suffering from a depopulation problem. They're suffering from various other maladies as well. Let's bring it back here to the home front for a minute. So, being that we get to travel and get to experience so much in the 49 other laboratories of democracy, I want to tell you a little bit again. I want to impress upon you what I think the state of Tennessee is doing correctly. Now, Tennessee's not perfect. No state is. But Tennessee, under the leadership of a very reform-minded government, Bill Lee, who is a self-made man, entrepreneur, extremely successful, ran for governor in Tennessee a couple terms ago. I think he just recently got reelected. He put his entrepreneurship and his can-do spirit to work here and followed in the footsteps of some great Republican governors before him. Look, Republicans are best when we are reforming government, when we're not just going along to get along. So what does Tennessee do? And again, they don't do everything perfectly, but let me tell you the things that they do right that I believe the Show Me State should emulate. Why should we emulate that? Because as David Stokes just pointed out, and he looks at all the data on this, as Tennessee continues to grow, Missouri, the Show Me State, continues to shrink, especially in and around our urban areas, which are really troubled and really plagued with things like excessive crime, really dysfunctional education systems, and so much more. Here's what the secret sauce is that's not so secret and not so magical. Not only do states like Tennessee deploy this, but so do the other monsters that you hear about so often: Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, North Carolina, South Carolina. So many of the other growing states have so much in common, and that would be they have no income tax. There are 9 states currently in the country that have no income tax, and I believe there's three others that are slowly but surely approaching that zero income tax level. Every single one of those states is doing well. They're all growing. People are moving there. People are expanding their businesses there. People find more growth, opportunity, and prosperity there. Number 2, Tennessee is and always has been a right-to-work state, a freedom-to-work state. I know this is a very emotional issue for some people. I am not anti-union. I am not a union buster. I am simply someone who wants people to have the choice of whether to join a union or not. That should not be forced upon them. And there are plenty of examples throughout the Southeast, these large factories where unions have gone in and tried to unionize their workforces, and the workers themselves in places like Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and others, they have rejected unionization. I mean, for God's sakes, They rejected unionization in New York, of all places, when Amazon employees, when people went in to try to unionize some Amazon employees up there, not once but twice, it was rejected there. So I think right to work does work, and it works extremely well. And number 3, in Tennessee, they have a very bold, very ambitious educational freedom school choice movement. They just passed another huge bill last year, which puts parents, it puts the students, not the systems, in charge of their education. Look, Tennessee doesn't have oil. They don't have palm trees and beaches. They're very similar to Missouri, and I think the volunteer state is one that we should compete with. We should emulate them and do the things right that they do, and I think we would all do much better. And that's the stump speech for today.
Great speaker, stump speech. And, Tim, with this massive surplus that we have from all of this federal government money that is injected into our state coffers, I think this would be time to eliminate the income tax. That has always been the scare that they say that, if we cut these income taxes or get rid of it, we're going to have a huge deficit. We're going to have to cut programs, blah, blah, blah. I think this is the best time to do it.
Yeah, Chris, since Missouri started cutting its income tax, our income tax used to be a top rate of 6%. And when I was in the legislature, we made the first move towards cutting the income tax ever in our history. And it's been slowly ticking down since then. Well, Chris, guess what? Since 2014, which was 9 years ago now, so almost a decade, we have nearly a decade of economic data, Chris, that shows our state budget has increased dramatically since we cut income taxes. Because guess what, Chris? People are willing to put more back into the bank and into our economy when their labor is not getting taxed excessively because of that.
Mm-hmm. Tim, speaking of banks, and you're a man who watches the market and watches his money, we've had these bank failures. SVB, First Republic, has had to be shorn up by the big banks. The Treasury Secretary and others, Senator Talent even said Monday that he has talked to folks. They are telling us that the banking system is secure. Today, I read a report, Blaine Luetkemeyer, who is a congressman from Missouri, who has a banking background, was president of a bank. Tim, he has called for the federal government to guarantee all $13 trillion worth of deposits in U.S. banks for a period of 30 to 60 days. We're no economists, but we are capitalists, and we are free marketeers. What's your thought on that?
Ooh, I don't know. Blaine tends to be, Congressman Luetkemeyer tends to be an expert on those issues, Chris, because as you mentioned, he does have that banking background. But
that's frightening, though. He's on the banking committee, and he's saying, hey, I don't know if our stuff is secure.
Yeah. and Chris, we talked to Senator Talent about this yesterday, and he kind of agreed with the point we were making. Chris, at what point do we stop bailing out the banking industry? It seems like they're the only industry that gets to be held harmless every single time there's an economic collapse or economic hiccup or economic problem. It's like, we got to rush in and save the bank, so there's going to be a banking collapse. I mean, would there be, Chris, maybe some of these banks shouldn't exist in the first place, right? If they're that fragile, if they're built on that much shaky ground, maybe the problem is we have too many of the good next to too many of the bad. I don't know. I'm not an expert in the area, but it just seems like it's an industry that keeps getting bailed out every 10 to 15 years or so.
And here's the $13 trillion question. This country is $34 trillion in debt already. Where are we going to get $13 trillion, God forbid, the banking system collapses, to guarantee all of these deposits? Do we have an extra $13 trillion sitting around somewhere? I mean, this is...
we just going to call... Yeah, we just going to call it Bank of China again? I mean, what the heck?
Yeah, so, it's, Jamie Dimon today, who heads the largest bank in the country, I think it's J.P. Morgan, he is meeting, Tim, with some other big bankers. They injected $30 billion into this First Republic Bank. They're looking to inject another $50 billion in the bank. Again, Tim, you're a man who watches the market and financial matters. Are you worried, or are you not concerned yet?
Chris, if if the banks want to take care of themselves and their own industry and they've got a plan for that, I say great. If the market can sustain that, if their industry can sustain that, fine. But why do we have to keep, to your point, why do we have to keep putting the federal government on the hook for this? Which let's remind people, the federal government is you, me, and everybody makes three, right? The federal government is simply simply the U.S. taxpayer.
Mm-hmm. And, Tim, one of the places that we would get this $13 trillion would, of course, be our emerging enemy, which is China. And right now, the Chinese president is visiting Russia. And we will speak with Miles Yu, Senior Fellow and Director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute, when we come back on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, 99.1 HD3 and newstalkstl.com. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm News 4 meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. On and off showers will continue through the early evening before eventually exiting the area. Temperatures tonight will steadily drop to a low 42 degrees, and then tomorrow scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible in the afternoon, highs reaching 67. More heavy rain moves in Thursday into Friday, and Friday is now a first alert weather day as there is a risk for some minor flooding with that rain. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
Hey guys, Ken Kruger. I've gotten to know these guys really well over the last few years. Yes, St. Louis Bath and Renovation. They're the most trusted name in bathroom remodelers in the St. Louis area. In fact, if you need bathroom repairs, complete bathroom remodeling, or handyman services, call St. Louis Bath and Renovation at 314-477-6476 or email Rob at stlbr.com. That's St. Louis Bath and Renovation.
Is your portfolio prepared for the biggest risks facing investors today? Hi, it's Tim Jones. High inflation and a rapidly changing economy may impact your investments. If you haven't made appropriate changes, your portfolio may not be positioned to address some of the biggest risks in today's economy. That means it's time to request your free portfolio review from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. You can hear their latest views on the markets and investing during On the Money, hosted by Stifel financial advisors Bob Stockdale and Eric Robert, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on News Talk STL 101.9. They can help you get organized, guide you through critical retirement decisions, and create a portfolio designed around your needs. To schedule your free portfolio review, go to clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com, 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas & Company, Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. Like and subscribe to us on Rumble. News Talk STL.
Dinner and discussion lasted for more than 4 hours. President Putin even escorting President Xi to his car afterwards and told him he's envious of China, telling Xi at one point China has made a colossal leap ahead in its development in recent years. It's causing genuine interest all around the world, and we even feel a bit envious. We will discuss all those issues, including your initiative that we highly respect. Our cooperation in the international arena undoubtedly helps strengthen the basic principles of the global order and multipolarity. Now, President Xi returned the compliment, telling Putin, quote, under your strong leadership, Russia has made great strides in its prosperous development.
Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. The world is watching this grand meeting in Moscow between the Chinese president and the Russian president. Many would say this is 2/3 of the emerging axis of evil. We'll ask our next guest, Miles Yu, about that. Miles, how are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me.
Good. I just want to let me give your bio here. You are a senior fellow and director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute, and you're also a former China policy advisor to Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Miles, I have to ask you, this meeting is going on right now. The world is watching, as I said. What are we learning so far, if anything, from these meetings?
What I'm learning here, and we should be learning from all this, is that the world is increasingly clear about which side that the good guys and bad guys are. So this 2 decades of all this hyperventilated talk about the globalization, the earth is flat, is totally bogus now. So because there are bad guys, there are good guys, and the bad guys are grouping together, and the good guys are also grouping together. So it is nothing surprising. I mean, your lead into this episode talks about Putin and Xi boosting each other's ego by basically, saying great things about each other. I mean, the fact is, those were two most aggressive leaders in the world, and they're most sort of having both near pariah status. So they need this kind of a mutual confidence boosting.
Miles, Tim Jones here. Great to speak with you again. Thanks for joining us again here today. You know, Miles, Rasmussen came out with a poll, one of the latest polls today, saying nearly 60% of Americans say the U.S. is on the wrong track. And, there's probably a zillion reasons for those. But, Miles, one of those would possibly be, as we've seen in some of this polling, the fact that Americans feel like we are leading from behind. I mean, Miles, you would think that the White House would have something to say about this huge summit meeting between Putin and Xi, but I haven't seen much of anything from them at all. It seems like Joe Biden is more than happy to have America take a back seat to two other nuclear powers getting together and deciding what we're going to be doing on the world stage. Miles, for those who are concerned about America's leadership on the global stage, this is a very disconcerting development indeed, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think, great leadership basically has to have two very important qualities. Number one, you have to think very clearly about the strategic priority of the nation. What is the most important national security agenda? I think, the Trump administration set in motion a clear thinking about the Americans' focus. That is, we believe that China is our number one national security threat. And the Biden team more or less sort of agree with us because we did the heavy lifting. On the other hand, another quality of great leadership is the ability to convey to the American people what's at stake, to tell the American people the message. And I don't think the Biden team has done a great job. I'm looking at how infrequent their press conferences have been from President Biden. And I think, President Reagan did that, and I think President Trump did that. And you talk about the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He constantly conveyed to the American people why this is the case. And I think right now we're facing even more so. That is, there's a convergence of the two dark forces, one in Europe represented by Russia and one in Asia represented by China. And that basically requires America's global leadership. America obviously have been torn in the past of focus in Europe or Asia. Right now, it's very clear it should be both because the common threat coming from Europe and from Asia has emerged into one. And that's why NATO even has taken a much more positive and proactive role than the United States, because NATO secretary has been constantly saying that we should expand the NATO membership or NATO influence in Asia Pacific. Japan is also reaching out to NATO. So America should not be leading from behind. We should be more proactive.
We're speaking with Miles Yu, Senior Fellow and Director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute. Miles, how skeptical are you of China being an honest broker in peace talks between Ukraine and Russia?
It's not going to happen because China is not an honest broker. I mean, if you look at China's peace plan, it's a 12-point plan. Number one thing is China asks everybody to respect sovereignty. China doesn't even have the guts to tell Vladimir Putin to respect Ukrainian sovereignty. I mean, so obviously that's kind of it's a very very dishonest. And secondly, China is the country that respects the neighbors' sovereignty the least. China has more than half a dozen of countries to dispute with over territory. So this you talk about Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, India, and Vietnam, and a whole bunch of countries in the in the South China Sea, including the Philippines as well. So China has no credibility. Number one. Number two, China does not have a very good track record to be an honest broker. China has done this, has sponsored this kind of talks in the past, particularly if you think about the six-party talk over the North Korean nuclear issue. China basically played the international community by siding with North Korea. The host of the whole talks, empty talks for years and years without any particular result. So this is not a very good country to trust for the global peace. So and now, of course, if you look at the China another most important peace plan in the 12-point plan, it says that we should abandon Cold War mentality. That's Chinese code word for blaming NATO for the war in Ukraine. That's exactly what Vladimir Putin has been saying. So China has been echoing what Moscow's propaganda line has been. So this is basically not going to work, and China should never be even in that spot to pretend to be the global peacemaker.
Miles, China has a few weeks ago, before this latest news cycle, there was a previous news cycle where China was reported to have been making additional moves in Latin America, our side of the globe, and not that far away from us when you consider about how small the world has gotten, technologically speaking and militarily speaking. Miles, I was doing a little research on that issue, and I found a piece from nearly 15 years ago talking about China making overtures in Latin America. Miles, China is a country with a rich history. It goes back centuries. They've been playing the long game in Latin America, haven't they? And how concerned should the U.S. government be about China basically being on our doorstep?
We should be very concerned about China's march into Latin America for many reasons. One is strategic. China always being the supporter of openly rogue states in Latin America. Those countries are normally extremely anti-America. For example, China has a very robust relationship with Cuba. China has this probably the largest Spanish language training for China's foreign ministry and the other trade ministry in Cuba. So China also has been very, very supportive of the Venezuela Marxist regime. So it's been going on for more than close to 2 decades now. Secondly, China also used Latin America to neutralize America's economic and trade advantage in this region. For example, China has reached out to Brazil and bring Brazil into what they call the BRICS country, the sort of regional pact where China is playing the leading role, and all other countries, including Brazil, Russia, India, South Africa, to be the junior partners in that kind of a quasi-alliance. So for both economic as well as a geostrategic reason, we should be very concerned about China's growing influence in Latin America.
Speaking with Miles Yu, Senior Fellow and Director of the China Center at the Hudson Institute. Miles, I want to ask you, what is China's long game? I know that, as my partner said, they think in 1,000-year increments. I know they believe that they are a world power that's on par with the United States now, and they want to show their influence around the world. But how do they grow and prosper when you have an antagonistic relationship with the United States, which is your major trading partner, which fuels your growth? What's their long game? What's their plan?
Okay, so China is trying to create the illusion to the rest of the world that somehow it is the hawkish talk in the United States against China that caused all those problems. So they want to change the U.S. policy. That is not true. No matter who is in charge in Washington, D.C., the very existence of the United States poses a mortal threat to the Chinese Communist Party because of what we stand for. It's not what we do, it's who we are. Because their biggest fear is that the United States, what the United States stands for, will be sort of inspiring to the Chinese people. If every Chinese acting like America, the Chinese Communist Party's regime will be in trouble. So their long game is to basically diminish Americans' influence globally. So that's basically it. So to do that, they have to not only change American policy, but also to change the international order led by the United States globally. And they're not going to be able to export the communist ideology at this stage because nobody wants to buy expired goods. But they want to create a global dependency on China economically, technologically, and strategically. And after that, China is going to export its model of governance to the global arena. And that has been the stated purpose of the Chinese Communist Party.
Miles, what about the Chinese people? China's a huge country. It is it has a large and it has a large population. I know we've seen some stories that say over the next decade or so China may be facing the same kind of declining population problem that a lot of the advanced countries are. But there's a lot of folks currently residing in China. Is there any hope at all, Miles, that the Chinese people eventually at some point, and I'm sure this would be kind of a generational shift as new generations of Chinese people come along, that they don't want to live under the yoke of the Communist Party of China anymore? Or does the Communist Party, Miles, just have such a hold on the Chinese people with their propaganda machine and everything else that there's just no hope for that?
You asked a very excellent question. In all the years I served during the Trump administration, the single most violent reaction to whatever we say, what we do, is Chinese reaction to the very simple statement by Secretary of State Pompeo that the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese people are different things. They were so paranoid over the statement because the biggest reality in China is that the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese people are oppositional. They are totally different. When we talk about China threat, we're not talking about the China as a nation. We're talking about the Chinese Communist regime, the government, the ruling elites who are Marxist-Leninist and who are wired to basically to beat the United States. The Chinese people are very friendly to the United States, and they are the victim of the Chinese Communist Party's monopoly dictatorship. And it's very clear. One of the longest lines in the world is the people waiting in line to get the visa to the United States in some of the Americans' consulates in China. And so this is the phenomenon that we should always keep in mind, and this is the one reason that we should be very optimistic about the future of the world, because once we enable the Chinese people, we provide the condition for them to live with dignity, with freedom, and the regime in Beijing will be gone very soon. So that's why the Chinese Communist Party recently has completely intensified its surveillance state over the Chinese people. And the Chinese government each year spends more money on policing, on surveillance over its own people than on its national defense, which is second largest in the world.
Miles, we've been told for years that the Russian army was a major army, a real power, a real force. We've seen when their war with Ukraine that it is the exact opposite, that they are a paper tiger. Is China the same way? And I ask that because I have a U.S. News and World Report article that said that U.S. intelligence helped India rout China during a 2022 border clash. Is China a paper tiger like Russia?
Well, this is a very interesting question because whether military advantage can be manifested, it to a large degree depends on the type of warfare, the type of military operations. So Russia is widely considered as number 2 military power in the world, right after the United States. Mostly we're talking about strategic assets. It's a nukes, it's a long range strike capabilities, and then the big item weaponries. In those cases, Russia definitely has that status. But when we talk about the war in a very limited space where strategic assets were not utilized, like the war in Ukraine, and then you see some of the problems, right? It's conventional war, and Russia resorted to using mercenaries like the Wagner groups, and so that's the problem. So China is the same. All depends on what kind of warfare we're talking about. When China launched this massive invasion of Vietnam, for example, in 1979, they utilized primarily tanks and artillery and ground troops. And they had advantage because of it. They have numerical advantage. But when it comes to modern warfare, we require a whole bunch of other things, cyberspace, naval, air, and that could be a different story. So I cannot answer that question accurately. It all depends on the battlefield scenario in the future. I mean, I think, all I can say is if we consider that the Taiwan scenario is real, and it will be a very different warfare because it will be totally different from what we see in Ukraine, because the Taiwan scenario will be mostly fought in the space and in air and in sea.
Miles, thank you so much for being with us today. That was very informative. I hope that you will join us again. If you want more information about what Miles is working at the China Center at the Hudson Institute, you can reach them at hudson.org. Miles, thank you so much, and we hope to have you back again.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, he's very informative. This is the second time that we've had him on, and
really is.
Boy, I don't know, Tim, between Dakota Wood and Jim Talent last week and Miles Yu today, the 60-minute story about our Navy in the Pacific. Boy, we almost need to be sleeping with one eye open almost and being ready to jump under the bed to avoid a nuclear attack or a missile attack.
I tell you what, Chris, we're overwhelmed with brilliance. Unfortunately, it's all very terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. But we're very lucky that we live in a free country where we can have this information and digest it for ourselves and become aware. When we come back, we'd love to take your phone calls, 314-912-1019. We talked about a lot of things today, Missouri politics, national politics. Anything you want to talk about, we'd love to hear it. When we come back on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
Made in St. Louis for St. Louis. It's News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm News 4 meteorologist Leah Hill with your first alert forecast. On and off showers will continue through the early evening before eventually exiting the area. Temperatures tonight will steadily drop to a low 42 degrees, and then tomorrow scattered showers and a few thunderstorms possible in the afternoon, highs reaching 67. More heavy rain moves in Thursday into Friday, and Friday is now a first alert weather day as there is a risk for some minor flooding with that rain. That's your first alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Leah Hill.
Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Better than nothing? The bill to protect kids from so-called transgender treatment passes, but it doesn't protect everybody permanently. I'll explain on Wednesday.
Morning starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL.
Hey, Chris Arps here to tell you about my good friends over at the Dental Link. We were very honored last Friday to have Dr. Alan Link in the studio with us, and it was good. You hear me doing ads for him, you hear the commercials, but it's good to hear him in person, and you can really see what a great dentist he is, not just because of the work that he does, but because he actually does care about his clients. If you are like me and you were missing one or two teeth, you may want to look at mini dental implants. They might be the solution for you. You know, many dental implants, they're less invasive, they're less painful, and your recovery time is much shorter. And, you know, plus the best of all, the cost to you is much less than with older, more traditional dental implants. There are two convenient locations at the Dental Link. There's one in Baldwin and one in Melville. You can give them a call today at 314-794-6464, 314-794-6464, or learn more information on the web at thedentallink.com.
Michael's Flooring Outlet is a locally owned and operated family business for more than 28 years, featuring exclusive products, unbeatable prices, and expert installation. You can choose from a wide variety of flooring options, including carpet, hardwood, laminate, ceramic tile, luxury vinyl, natural stone, plus many other options. And you'll gain a peace of mind knowing that your flooring and carpet installation will be done right the first time when you hire the experts at Michael's. You can shop in-store at one of their 3 convenient locations or shop from home online. Check out everything Michael's Flooring has to offer at igotfloored.com.
This hour of Jones and Arps brought to you by Window World. Simply the best for less. 314-993-1800 or visit windowworld.com. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 941, 991 HD3 and newstalkstl.com.
Previously, President Trump predicted that his indictment and possible arrest could come as soon as tomorrow. And while that could still happen, there are some experts out there who think the indictment could come much later than that, likely later this week or even perhaps next week. Meantime, on Capitol Hill, 3 House GOP committee chairs are now requesting testimony from New York DA Alvin Bragg. In fact, there's a letter I can tell you about. It reads this way: your actions will erode confidence in the even-handed application of justice and unalterably interfere in the course of the 2024 presidential election.
5:46 in the afternoon. Be careful driving home. You know, Tim, as we said at the opening of the show, we are on Trump indictment watch, day 1. It is predicted that tomorrow could be the big day. And as our guest Hogan Gidley said, this will be the most magnificent mugshot ever. What do you think? If it happens.
I think so, Chris. I think it'll be one for the ages. The Trumpster never lets an opportunity to have some free press go by, whether people think it's good, bad, or ugly. I'm sure he'll take advantage of this as well. Yeah, they're saying that the grand jury may hand down its indictment tomorrow. I don't know who these people, Chris, the thing that bothers me,
Yeah.
grand jury proceedings are supposed to be secret. How is it that all these people know about when this grand jury indictment is going to come down? And even if it's going to come down, right, Chris, they're not supposed to be public, nothing about it. So it bothers me that it's leaking. But of course, Chris, when it comes to Donald Trump, boy, have we learned the leaks are everywhere.
And, Tim, we're making light of this, which we should to a certain extent. But as we said yesterday and today, this is really a sad event in American history. Whatever you think of Donald Trump, love him, hate him, no opinion at all. I'd like to find those people because I don't think there's anybody in America that does not have an opinion on Donald Trump. But the fact that a former president of the United States is going to be photographed, fingerprinted, booked, especially for something like this. Now, if it was Watergate, or Iran-Contra maybe, and, I can see it. But for something like this, you're going to humiliate this man. But more importantly, you're humiliating the office. You're demeaning the office of having him have to go through the indignity of this. It makes me sad. It really, really does.
Yes, great piece, Chris, in the New York Post today by Miranda Devine, who I think Miranda really hit the nail on the head. The headline is, a potential Trump indictment is a sideshow gift to the Biden family. That's really all it is, Chris. I mean, why in the world are we so infatuated? Why is the media, why is the left so infatuated? Chris, if they really wanted Trump to go away, they'd stop giving him so much freaking attention. It's because they have this Trump derangement syndrome. It's like they can't live with him. They can't live without him. Meanwhile, Chris, we actually have an actual president, allegedly in the White House now by the name of Joe Biden. And you've got raging inflation. You've got bank failures. You've got a rising China. You've got all these other problems we could and should be focused on. But we're going to now be focused on whether or not Trump's alleged hush money operation with a former porn star is something that we should, Chris, what's going to happen?
Tim, they're not porn stars. She's an adult actress.
Right. Okay. An adult performer. So, Chris, you know what's going to happen? All these other real issues that you and I have been talking about up until yesterday, the media is going to act like they don't exist anymore. The world doesn't become a safer place just because Donald Trump gets indicted on what should be, if anything, a misdemeanor charge for falsifying business records. It's really, you're right. It's a sad state of affairs for the
really
nation at large.
And speaking of a misdemeanor, here are a couple of quotes, Tim, from some prominent Democrats on the impending indictment. Norm Eisen, he's an attorney and senior Brookings fellow. He told reporters this yesterday, quote, it's an open and shut books and records misdemeanor. Now, to elevate it to a felony is more complicated. This is from David Pepper. He's the former chair of the Ohio Democratic Party. He said, quote, there are far more serious crimes for which he should also be held to account. I'm wondering if pressure like this and pressure from Republicans, is this enough, Tim, to stop Bragg from destroying his credibility tomorrow or in the coming days?
Yeah, Chris, and they're going to fight fire with fire. It's interesting. I find it interesting how Republicans have really circled the wagons, even folks who are not big Trump lovers or big Trump fans. Because Chris, you know what they've been able to do? They've been able to put aside the persona of Trump and say, this exercise is wrong. It's a political exercise. It's a political persecution. And, I know a lot of people are not happy at all with Alvin Bragg being hauled before Congress. Chris, I don't know that I'm happy with that either, because, really, in a vacuum, in a fair world, Congress should not be invading the jurisdiction of a prosecuting attorney.
Sure.
But this is not a fair world, and if Bragg wants to play this game, then they're going to fight fire with fire. So I'm sorry, I don't know that two wrongs make a right or not, but you can expect Republicans not to go. No one should. We shouldn't lie down quietly and watch the political persecution of a former president.
And even the most ardent Trump haters, I mean, you could be to the point where you absolutely detest this man's shadow. Is you have to just see what's going on after these 7 years with the Russia, with banning him from social media while Iranian terrorists and the what's the group in Afghanistan that we fought against? The Taliban. They can have Twitter accounts. You impeach him twice. You indict him on this frivolous charge. I mean, how partisan do you have to be to not be kind of like, well, maybe they've got a point here?
Yeah, and Chris, you know why people should be worried? Because if they can do this to Donald Trump,
exactly.
a guy who's got this massive fan, 75, 80 million fans across the country, around the world, he's got all the money, he's got all the lawyers, he can fight this thing tooth and nail. But if they can do that to him, I think a lot of Americans are sitting there going, "Ooh, that could crush me." If we're going to start down the path of political persecutions just because some prosecutor wants to make a name for themselves, when am I next?
Yeah. On some lighter news, Tim,
Yes.
I was kind of sad yesterday that I wrote this, and I was like, oh my God, the green energy kooks are winning. Dodge unveiled yesterday the 2023 Challenger SRT Demon 170.
Yeah.
Tim, it's Dodge's last gas-powered muscle car.
No.
This is
Are
it.
you serious?
This is the last
Wow.
gas-powered muscle car. Everything else will be electric. What's your thoughts on that? If you can make an electric car that gets the same amount of horsepower, does it make a difference?
Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and a big roaring Chevrolet, or a Dodge, or a Ford, or whatever. Chris, we are the country that made muscle. Forget about making them great again. We made them great in the first place, right? That's where they were born. You see those big old rigs sometimes around. It's a lot of nostalgia. I don't know if I wonder if we're going down the primrose path here, where we're going to realize that making every vehicle electric, it's not going to work out for us well, Chris, is it? Because California is already proving you can't plug all these vehicles in at the same time. It's kind of like part of their demonic pledge here to kind of force all of us to stop driving, period, right? Well, if everyone's forced to get an electric car, but then everyone can't plug their cars in, well, then guess what, Chris? who gets to decide who gets to plug their car in and go where when? That's coming next in California
Tim,
and maybe across the country.
See, Tim, you're thinking way too many moves ahead. Democrats think one, maybe 1.5 moves ahead. They're not going to think that far down the line that, hey, maybe if we build all these electric cars, we may not have the capacity to fuel them all. They don't. That's seventh dimension test chess for them. And so no,
I was just thinking, Chris. I was just thinking, Chris, that since all of our other conspiracy theories have come true, I had to invent a new one.
Yeah.
You know? So. Yeah.
Hey, you know our old friend. You remember John Kasich, former Ohio governor, presidential candidate. You remember he was always wanting to be the middle of the road type of guy. You know, he's been off the radar screen lately. But Tim, I hear that he has a new gig, and you will never guess where you will be seeing former Ohio Governor John Kasich next.
Okay, I'll take a random stab in the dark.
Yeah, go ahead. You'll get.
Is he gonna be like the new Masked Singer or something like that?
No. Take it serious. Where do you think? Where do you think he would end up?
Okay, so not Dancing with the Stars. Wow,
Chris, you're gonna kick yourself when I tell you this. He's going to be a MSNBC NBC contributor now.
No, no.
John Kasich.
I used to like him. You know, I mean, that's a complete sellout.
Well, how can you not love a man who every chance that he got told you that his dad was a mailman and that he also became a milkman afterwards and that his mother stayed at home? I mean, that was his standard political stump speech. He wore that into the ground, and now he's going to be cashing in on MSNBC. I wonder if he'll be supporting Republicans.
See, that's the problem with guys like him, Chris. It's like, okay, I get it. He hated Trump, okay? He made no bones about it. But by going on MSNBC, does that mean you hate the entire Republican Party now? I mean, John Kasich has been delusioned into the fact that Donald Trump is not the future of the Republican Party. The guy's 75, 76 years old. There's going to be a new generation coming. But John Kasich was had so much TDS, he just couldn't get past it, I guess. I don't know.
Well, he can join Michael Steele and the Trump or Bush communications director, Nicole something, who has
Cole
a
Wallace.
show.
Yeah.
And my friend, I think she's still my friend, Tara Wall, who is a member of the Lincoln Project. She has not disavowed herself from that, which absolutely amazes me. Tim, great show. Enjoy
you too.
Tennessee. Get some golf in. When where we're leaving you, but stay tuned. You'll listen to Larry Connors, USA, give his opinion on the news of the day. And Joey's taking us out with a little Atomic Dog. You're listening to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Woof!
We've been here 30 years, 30 Christmases in this house, and we have the traditions that most families have.
That's Terry talking about her experience with Rhino Shield ceramic coating.
We did Rhino Shield 14 years ago, and the house still looks the same as the first day. Rhino Shield really worked with me to help me get just the right, nice, soft yellow, and it's 14 years later, and it's the same color.
The main reason Terry called Rhino Shield is because it's backed by its 25-year transferable warranty.
It just sounded wonderful that we could have the house coated with Rhino Shield and not have to worry about it again for 25 years.
Take it from Terry. Give Rhino Shield a call now for a free evaluation. 877-25-RHINO. 877-25-RHINO. Or visit 877-25rhino.com.
There have been neighbors that have come by and said, "Did you just have your house painted?" Because they wanted to know who the contractor was. And I said, "No, it's actually Rhino Shield."
877-25rhino.com.
Who has the best burger around town? Who has 19 TVs, 4 pool tables, 5 dartboards, and 3 golden tea machines? Who is open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week? Who has live music every Saturday night? Check it all out at 2shamrockspublichouse.com. That's 2 Shamrocks in O'Fallon, Missouri. Plus, the owners, Tim and Mel, are pretty awesome.
2 Shamrocks Public House. Online at 2shamrockspublichouse.com. Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Better than nothing? The bill to protect kids from so-called transgender treatment passes, but it doesn't protect everybody permanently. I'll explain on Wednesday.
Mornings starting at 5:30
on News Talk STL. St. Louis's place to talk.
Freedom of speech is one of the anchors of our society.
News Talk STL.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefontaine, KNVS Bowling Green.
This is News Talk STL at 1